Hey everybody, welcome to the Home Care Forum podcast with your hosts, Sasha, Guillaume, and Emina Poricanin. Today we have our guests from Visiting Aid Big Group, and they are here to talk to us about all things home care, and they're a technology platform. And Emina will introduce, as she always does, our guests. But we're going to get right into it and learn about their technology, their take on what's happening in the industry, and inform our listeners as we always do. Please follow us on Home Care Forum Podcast on YouTube. Those on Patreon, you'll still be able to hear it there. We still upload the audio, and as always, we thank you for following us. Amina, how's it going?
Hey Sasha, well, I'm good, but I hear that you're in the South on an island somewhere. I don't know if you want to
Yes.
specify which one, but thanks for putting on a decent shirt for us all, since we are now on YouTube.
Yes,
You
Amina
need
made
to
me.
know.
Yes, I did. I was laughing, and Amina did make me change my shirt. She thought I was a little unprofessional. I told her she was glad that I had a shirt on, but because I was going to be on the beach. But I'm here, and let's go. Let's get to it.
Yeah. Our massive followers, just half kidding, right? Our massive followers are so thankful that you have a decent shirt on. Okay, no, seriously, we don't want to be jealous too much that you're on a beach enjoying things as we're, looking at another snowstorm tonight. We have the pleasure of welcoming a huge group, as Sasha said, from Visiting Aid in no particular order, because these are all very important people at Visiting Aid. We have Jill Burns, the Chief Operating Officer, Brian McCormick, the Director of Sales, and Alex. Alex, unmute yourself. Help me with your last name.
Pantello.
Bantello, the brain and the IT officer, I think all around do everything C-suite gentlemen at Visiting Aid. Thanks so much for joining us today. This promises to be a very informational and educational podcast slash YouTube video.
Thank you so much for bringing us in today, Amina.
So
Thank
tell
you.
us a little bit initially, I guess, what the motivation, the impetus was to open up Visiting Aid, because you are a relatively new platform. I would say coming to maybe 10 years, which in platform years, right, is considered new. So tell us a little bit about what the motivation was to provide the solution.
Well, when I first met Alex, who had already built the first version of Visiting Aid, it was being used by a very large LIXA in Brooklyn to manage their nursing visits. We're talking about 7,000 plus members because they did not want to manage their nursing visits on another one of these platforms. So I met Alex in 2019, and after being a LIXA operator and administrator for close to 30 years at that time, I was a super user on all of the competing platforms. And I really wanted to focus on building something that was unique and user-friendly, focusing first on the ease of use for the caregivers. As we built out this platform over the years, we became aware of all the different needs of the operators, LIXAs, CDPAPs, Social Adult Daycare Centers that are using our software. And we decided to incorporate everything under one umbrella. So whereas Visiting Aid customers do not have external sources for onboarding, they do not have external sources for intake, they do not have external sources for revenue cycle management. We provide a platform robust enough for a company to manage all of these things under one platform.
Thanks so much. So, Alex, this marriage comes together. What made you trust Jill so much with your baby? Like, talk to us a little bit. I mean, Sasha and I are entrepreneurs. You are an entrepreneur. Trust is a big issue, right? Especially in those early days when you are getting started. What about Jill and her experience? I mean, she has a lot of experience, obviously, but what made this the
Of
perfect
course.
marriage?
So I came from a technical background, right? I have a 25 years of technology. I I mean, if you're gonna tell me to build something, I will build. I know how to build. If I have to build tomorrow Uber, I will build Uber. Like so I know technology. But when we come to this space, and of course, in the beginning, I thought it's very straightforward space. I mean, the home care industry. But the moment we
Mhm.
start like putting all the puzzles together, I understand that it's not enough to know the technology. You need to have a brain. You need to have a person who knows this industry inside and out. And with Jill experience, she knows this business inside and out. Like so. That's how like I'm the man behind the code, behind platform, and Jill is she knows what's need to be done.
And if I may, I think that my understanding of operating a
Right.
home care agency and what it's like boots on the ground, what it's like day in and day out for operators really made the difference in how we built this platform out. How a coordinator works, how the billing team works, how a caregiver responds to being told, well, you need to clock in and clock out. I started implementing EVV in the late 90s when Santrax came out. So we really had a strong understanding of both sides of the coin in regards to operations. Inside in the office, what an administrator and all their staff go through, and also compassionate to the needs of the caregivers.
So we have a very diverse team. Like I'm always like on the technology side. Jill is always like operational, compliances. Brian's he's gonna talk about himself, but he's expert in the implementation and what's to be done in billing. So we have a very diverse skills to manage our clients.
So EVV is obviously the big topic, right, these days in home care, in addition to CDPAP, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But with EVV, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing your clients still struggle with? Because, I mean, even the state is trying to figure out how to best enforce this, right? There's been a number of pushback bases by providers. The consumers don't necessarily always like it. The caregivers don't want to follow it. So what are you seeing these days as the biggest challenges to getting that EVV compliance and utilization?
Well, for our clients, the CDPAP population, it's very difficult to get the EVV statistics up because the caregivers are aware that if they live with the patient, they don't have to clock in and out. That is one of the largest challenges that the majority of them are at 85% EVV or above because counts when we with them from us and we encourage them. We make it as easy as possible again for the caregivers. Our app is the easiest to use. We translate the telephonic in every language available. And we really pride ourselves on making it easy for the caregivers. So we've
source
gotten
of
those
frustration
statistics up
for
very high.
providers, at least, has been that there's no clear threshold they're supposed to aim for, right? The government comes in and says, oh, you're not complying or you're not utilizing it, or prove to us you're complying. The state did start clamping down on the plans, at least. I think with the expectation, which is reasonable, that they will pass that on to the providers, right? The state is saying there are too many providers. We can't possibly regulate them all. We've tried. OMIC has been sending letters, right, the last few months. But instead of trying to control the providers, we're going to just threaten the MLTC's reimbursement, knowing that they'll turn around and then they'll start regulating the providers. So that is what I is trying to figure out how to reach this point that is still a big question mark, reach this point of compliance so that their reimbursement is safe. Because right now they have no idea what the plans are going to expect from them.
Emina, that's actually a really good point you make, right? Because even before the letters went out as a verification organization, you have to track trend analysis and you're always trying to improve EVV. One thing that's always been difficult, right, in previous years, it'll take my business to another agency. But I think we're at least now seeing maybe the state's starting to do something. And I'm in the city at least 3-4 times a week in various agencies, and a couple auditors have walked in, and I'm not going to name plans, right, because I don't want to do that, but agencies have been told that the EVV percentages have to be increased, otherwise something may happen.
What is surprising to me is that we're now in the new budget season, right, and providers are still not EVV and all of these coming standards. I think there will have to be probably a large or a large start taking this serious. Since he's going to be penalized, and then everybody's going to start taking it seriously.
You're right to some extent that there has to be, unfortunately, someone has to be the agency that gets hit hard. But I also think, and again, I know Jill and Alex mentioned this, but the technology has to get better to make it easier for caregivers to do stuff. So one of the things, now dovetailing, going into what you just said, we have a platform that makes it very, very easy for the coordinators and the caregivers to manage the visits. And what's very unique about it, it even starts from the beginning when you're entering an authorization. Now, whether that's a linked authorization coming from senior or one of these other payers, a lot of flexibility in how that's set. So it allows, whether it's CDPAP, where you have 20 hours a week, whether there's specific days, there's a lot of controls that go in that allow the visit to be scheduled where you're not disrupting the caregiver or coordinator's ability to do their job. One example would be you have 20 hours a week. It could be any 5 days. You could set that up where it's 5 days, 20 hours. You could do a set schedule. You could do it where it's 4 hours on a particular day. You have a lot of flexibility. That's fine. We don't charge our clients. We do this to increase EVV. We remind the caregivers 15 minutes before when they should clock in, 15 minutes afterwards when they should clock out.
Switching gears a little bit, we lost Sasha because of some unexpected tropical island time connection issues, but we won't be mad at Sasha for that. But let's segue into talking about consumer direct. I know right now that you have about an even split between LIXA, PCA, and then CDPAP personal assistant cases, but it wasn't always the case. You really specialized and did so well with consumer direct in those years. I'm sure you've learned a lot about these operators, how they work. What are they feeling now as they're being forced to basically shut everything down by April 1? It looks like that thing is going through.
It does, Emina. Fortunately, the majority of our CDPAP operators have LIXAs or have obtained LIXAs during this transition time. We are happily helping them implement that program. And as the compliance officer of Visiting Aid, I have been advising them on best practices in regards to operating, how to use the HCS system, to do their reporting, how to keep their credentialing up to date. And that it's actually been a very positive thing for Visiting Aid because we feel that our system is robust enough to pivot for them, and they can open up different lines of business under one account. So they can have different offices, they can have different locations, and it's very easy to manage.
Oh, that's great. It's so refreshing to hear that the platform is making that process smoother, because the CDPAP providers who have made that change in the past, and especially now under the pressures that they're under, they really struggle with understanding just how much clinical and compliance oversight LIXA requires, contrary to what an FI does. In addition to that, have you seen any of them actually closing shop or planning to close shop? Today, I held a webinar with a few accountants from the Bonadio accounting group, and we actually talked about that. It was a difficult subject, right? If you're not going to be around after April 1 because you're not a LIXA, do you have anything to sell? How do you sell it? How do you value it? So are you having any of those discussions, or have your clients, all of them, made plans for continuing some form of home care operations afterwards?
95% of our CDPAP operators have some plan how to continue to stay in the space and grow their businesses.
Great. That's great. It's interesting with a number of them going and working with PPL as subcontractors. I don't know what the platform is that PPL will be using. As everybody knows, I have ForWork, payroll. I mean, that payroll business is going to go to PPL and whoever the payroll provider is there. So I'm having these conversations with our clients who have FI operations or who are strictly FIs about, what it means. These people are not going to be your employees anymore. Even if you're continuing on as a subcontractor, they are not going to be on your EIN. And I'm sure you're having those conversations as well with the entities that are subcontractors for you, that are your clients right now, because PPL has its own platform, as I understand, for the services that you provide. So even if they're staying in the CDPAP program as a subcontractor, they're moving on to different platforms, is what I'm saying.
Well, some of the agencies that do have that agreement with PPL are planning on continuing with visiting aid and doing some type of a reporting to PPL. That is what we've heard so far. Everyone is hesitant right now to change platforms, to move, to make any extreme changes in light of everything that's going on and the failure of PPL to onboard caregivers and consumers fast enough. So even though it looks like it's going through, and I'm not an attorney and I don't know everything that's going on with the regs, but it looks like there's a great fight going on as well. Most of our operators are very optimistic. Only 2 of the plans that we know of have agreed to work with PPL.
Yeah, so as far as the platform that's being used, I understand that that's still being discussed, but I do know that PPL will be charging the subcontractors a hefty fine if they choose not to use PPL's EVV platform. And I forget what the name is of their platform, but to my understanding, it hasn't been approved in New York State as an EVV provider. So I have no idea how this is going to work, but on the dollars and cents side, given how little PPL is already paying the providers, there's no money there for them to be paying what I understand is $9 per month per consumer if that subcontractor wants to use a visiting aid or some other platform that's not PPL's. I understand that that's still up in the air, but ultimately these subcontractors will have to go on PPL's payroll system, whatever it is, on PPL's billing platform, scheduling platform, etc. So it is an issue that I've spoken to a lot of vendors about that support the home care industry and something that they're preparing for.
I mean, just to add to that point a bit, right? Because obviously we talk about the technology, all P&L, how we're pivoting and we're doing it. We have plans, but I think the consumers and the PAs and even maybe the FIs that are going to be subcontractors, I think all the stuff that's up in the air, what gets lost is the human element. The consumers and the PAs, and we've always seen it a little bit when I'm in the field with some agencies in terms of the rate cuts that came through last year and how they gutted people's cash flow. There are certain agencies that couldn't make payroll, right? And there's a lot of disruption happening. I mean, we're February now, right? And maybe it's April 1st, and we've read and researched what happened in other states. We know some of the issues that are already occurring. And I think if the state does push this through, ram this through, no matter what, the vendors, listen, we'll pivot, we'll figure it out. But there's going to be a real human cost to what's about to come through this path. And the PAs and the consumers that are already feeling it, they're really going to be adversely affected by what's happening. And I think when we look at numbers and variables, like we do our budgeting and what's happening with payroll, we could make our numbers work. We're going to be fine, but there's going to be a large damage done in April, probably on if they push this through. And I don't think, I'm going to say I don't know, I'm going to be very definitive here, that the state legislators look at this and don't have the empathy to understand that home care is human care and that these people are going to be adversely affected. And I'm really, really worried about what's going to happen on that side of the equation.
That's a great point, Brian. One area where I've had to remind the providers that it's about the patients is when the FIs have been trying to convert the cases onto the PCA side and the plans have been refusing and saying, no, you're not allowed to do that. Actually, at the end of the day, it's the consumer's choice. If they want to receive services from a LIXA versus an FI, it doesn't matter that the FI that's going out of business was the one that educated the consumer to make this request. At the end of the day, the consumer wants to go to a LIXA, the plan needs to let them. So I'm not sure if you've been seeing that, but to Jill's earlier point, the plans have not signed, to my understanding, none of them have signed an agreement with PPL. There's a tentative agreement with Anthem. Anthem is the only plan that has agreed to fund PPL's payroll for the first few weeks because it's a huge payroll. But PPL has done this in other states, right? When they have been awarded the single FI, that's what they've done. They've gone to the MLTCs and said, you want to work with us, and you have to, then you need to advance us millions, maybe even billions, right? For the first few weeks so we can cover payroll. Anthem did it after some back and forth, but they still don't have a contract and they still don't have rates. I've heard the number $28 out there. Who knows? Who knows? There's no written agreement in place. So this whole thing is going to be a mess, but I still don't see it stopping, right? There's nothing stopping it. And then I don't know if you heard this, but last week, the number 12,000 of consumers, 12,000 consumers supposedly have signed on. And the governor was very proud that 12,000 people moved on to the PPL platform. That's nothing to be proud of. And a lot of the providers that I talked to who are well connected said that that number even is significantly inflated. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's to the FI's benefit to somehow deter the consumers or the personal assistants from signing up. They have to tell these folks, these cases, that the change is happening as of April 1, unless there's some big regulatory or litigation resolution. What will end up happening if no one is telling consumers and PAs about this shift is that you're going to get to March 30th, 31st, and everybody's still trying to clock in on your system, or they're trying to get paid for services that they provided to an FI that FI cannot bill for. So I tell clients, there's a balance, right? You have to try to keep the hours and the case with you for as long as possible, but you can't tell the consumer and the PA 100% you're going to be in business as of April 1. Like, you have to be honest and tell them that there may be a change happening. So that's what I've been dealing with as these days tick away. There's a lot of hope, there's a lot of fighting, but to be clear, none of these court challenges have been successful in finding that PPL is corrupt, that they got the contract illegally, that the governor was corrupt, that the legislature is corrupt. I think all of it was a sham, personally. I'll be on the record and say that. I think the whole RFP was an absolute sham. And as a taxpayer, I don't think that so much money should be going to a company outside of New York State. But does that mean a judge has invalidated this? No, and that's what we need to put a stop on it. So hopefully there are some lawsuits I'm watching closely. Freedom Care's litigation is very interesting to me. They haven't lost, they haven't had a judge discount what they've been saying. I think they're being taken very seriously. So I'm looking at that lawsuit very closely. And then there's one by Jones Day that I'm hopeful for. So any parting thoughts, feedback, comments you want to share with our listeners before we say goodbye today?
Well, I want to add one thing, kind of what you said, and kind of circle it all back to why Visiting Aid even exists, right? Like, what's the point of having another vendor in this space? That, there's other people out there doing this, and I think, we talked about some of the key things, but when you come back to EVV and communication and caregivers, there's a core competency at Visiting Aid where we generally care, right? So we spend time at agencies. We actually speak to caregivers directly. We'll do trainings with them directly. We'll understand what's going on. And it's really important that we don't lose fact that, within an agency, you have coordinators, operation teams that are busting their butt to do as best they can, right? And they're doing workarounds and they're doing all these things with systems. You have consumers trying just to understand a program, right? Like, what am I going to do? Is it FI? Is it LIXA? And it's really important that, just like you do every day, there's an advocate out there fighting for those people and trying to improve it. So no one's perfect. We've done a lot. We're going to do a lot more. But I think it's really critical that whoever you partner with, whether it be someone with you as a law firm, another agency, whatever the case may be, you need to be with people that generally care about the people they're affecting and what it actually means, not just to our bottom line, but what it means to industry as a whole. And how are we actually, going to bed every night? Are we making people's lives better? Or are we just collecting a buck? And I'm very, very proud to say that we are making lives better. just like you are. And I think at the end of the day, the more people that do that, we'll get through this. I think it's going to be very, very painful. And I have a lot of empathy for everyone it's affecting, but we're going to fight tooth and nail. We're going to give everything we got to this fight. And we're going to help our FI partners, our LIXA partners do whatever they can. Alex, our CTO, has done a lot of hours of free development where agencies say, I need this, I need that. And we're not going back and nickel and diming people. It's like, you need it, we're going to help you because it's the right thing to do.
We
So,
even do. I'm sorry. We just even doing like if I even know some of them might go out of business, and we don't care about this. If they ask us to do something and we know it's the right thing to do, we're here for them. I mean, we're like good neighbors. I mean, we're in this community. So I mean, even if tomorrow you're not going to be our client, but we're here to help you. And hopefully, I mean, we're gonna like see all these operators. I mean, on the block, if you will.
And from a compliance perspective, we've gone so far as to create a template for that FI letter and assist them in sending those letters out to the consumers. Because again, we are very strong on compliance. We would never tell them not to report, not to share the information that's required by law. And we've automated that for our clients as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing with our listeners and followers a little bit about your company. I know we've just scratched the surface. There's a lot more there, but I thank you for your time and being so open with sharing the information, but also sharing what you know with the industry and with the greater home care community. Thanks so much. And please be sure to follow. This episode will hit YouTube in a few days if Sasha can get back online and get it out. Just kidding. He always manages to. But thanks so much to all of our listeners. And until next time, take care.